Yeah.
The night that I saw you at the meeting that I asked you to come and speak at, the 12-step meeting, I was walking around feeling like the weight of the world inside me and on my shoulders. And it was like I knew that you were doing the one-on-one coaching with someone else and around their smoking addiction. And I remember thinking then, oh, I'd love to see you, right? And so when I asked you, I thought you were there, and I wanted to ask you a question that I'd been struggling with, and I asked you, and then you made that gesture about coming to see you. And I thought, okay, because I felt pretty much like I couldn't stop eating. I was eating massive amounts of food every day, and my internal conversation constantly was, what a loser I am, disgusting, I'm killing myself with food, and I can't stop. And the absolute horror and hopelessness of that, there was nothing I could do. And just that whole loneliness of feeling so like I didn't have a solution. And it was like really, I'd cry a lot, like every day, probably at some point, as I was doing my life. And I'd stay in bed for weeks and months, like whole of last year, September to January, I stayed in bed just doing that, trying to sleep, so I couldn't even be conscious of what I was experiencing, what I was feeling like, what I felt like to live in this earth. It was like horrible. And so when I came, I never expected what is going on with me to happen. Like, it is so out of, like, I have not a lot of knowledge. I've been introduced to a lot of really amazing things in this world. And a lot of different organizations, movements that talk about transformation and change and these kind of things that I've been to because that's what I'm looking for. And, I just couldn't seem to find it for me. How I still felt like that invisible barrier, that invisible wall between me and what I saw everybody having in the world. Like, I wanted to be able to have some of those. I had dreams and I wanted to be able to have them, or even just to feel okay in my own skin and not to be so self-condemning. So when we started our sessions, first of all, you gave me some really awesome distinctions, like that. I just felt like, it's like, when you're like walking through, you're just walking and like you hit a wall. It's like landed like that for me, but it landed like, wow. It's like, it was like such a wow, and it was so empowering. It's like those distinctions allowed some freedom, that mountain thing that I was talking about to fall away from me. And it was like, holy crap. And whatever you were talking to me about, and the little things that you were, because I already experienced myself as someone who would, why try? I'm going to fail. And when you came out with me with little, the little things were so little of the change that I thought, well, I could do that, right? And in starting to do that, and also getting those distinctions, especially the one about like that there's nothing wrong with me. Like, I've had that my whole life. And the more that I sought to be fixed, the worse it manifested in me. To where I hated to be. I had the feeling like when I was 15, before I started drugs and alcohol, I had the feeling like I would go to school. I never did any of mind-altering stuff then. But when I would go to school, I would feel that way so badly that to be with people, I would feel my own self-hatred, and I couldn't stand it. And I wouldn't go out for recess. I would just go walk the streets or hide in a laundromat. I was so unreachable. Like, people couldn't get to me and I couldn't get to them. Get out of that. It's like that's how it came to my life full circle again. And so like what's starting to happen, it's like